And to talk about the US-Venezuela tensions, joining me is Ambassador Mohan Kumar, former senior diplomat and Director General of Motwani Jadeja Institute of American Studies at Jindal Global University. Ambassador Kumar, good evening and welcome. What do you make of the latest escalation in the US-Venezuela tensions? Boarding a foreign ship seems unusual. The focus also apparently shifting from drugs to oil.
Thank you very much for having me. I think you'll have to situate the current action against the backdrop of the national security strategy, which was just issued by the United States government a couple of days ago, in which, much to everyone's surprise, the main focus has been the Western Hemisphere, where the United States believes that from the Western Hemisphere, it is suffering in terms of illegal migration, in terms of drugs, and in terms of narco-terrorism. So it has been actually foreshadowed in the national security strategy that the United States will henceforth not tolerate these kind of threats that emerge from the Western Hemisphere to its own self, that is the US, and we have heard about fentanyl and the rest of it. Venezuela has come in for special attention. As you mentioned, there is this oil, but there is also this issue of the US for a long time, even the previous administration have not considered Maduro as the legitimate leader of Venezuela. So you have an intersection of drugs, oil, illegal migration, national security, plus politics. So it's a combustible mixture of all these issues. And obviously, at the same time, you also have an opposition leader from Venezuela receiving the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo.
Right.
So you have a combination of all these factors, frankly, and that makes the situation extremely toxic. But I think the US also wants to set an example for the other countries in the region that US will not tolerate countries which actually allegedly export drugs, illegal migrants, narco-terrorists. So I think they want to fix this issue once for all. Whether they will succeed or not is anybody's guess. But I think I see this now as potentially a national security issue, frankly, for the United States.
Right. Ambassador Kumar, there have been strikes against, as you mentioned, more than 20 boats allegedly carrying narcotics in the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean. But the legality of these actions by the Trump administration, given that they took place in the so-called international waters, appear in the gray.
That is arguable. You're quite right about it. But it's also true that there is an international UN treaty which actually says all ships, even on high seas, should be able to have an automatic identification system, AIS as it is called.
Okay.
Now, with regard to this particular oil tanker, which is called Skipper, this Skipper was sanctioned by the US Treasury Department in 2019, as far back as 2019, by the previous administration for illegal running of oil. That is, sanctions have been imposed on Venezuela by the US. And despite that, this ship, which is allegedly again owned by a Russian magnate, has been running illegal oil supplies for Iran and for Hezbollah, arguably, and other people in the Middle East. So this Skipper oil tanker did not give out its correct location. So there is a bit of gray area here because the US will argue that this ship was under sanctions and that it did not indicate its current or exact location.
Amidst these developments, what is at stake for President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela? He says that President Trump is seeking to overthrow his government and is in fact eyeing Venezuelan oil in the name of fight against drug trafficking.
I think it's clear to me that he's fighting a political battle of his life. Very clear. because there is also, as I said, the opposition leader who has been
Yes.
given a Nobel Prize in Oslo. So it's clear to me that he is facing tremendous political headwinds, and that the election in which he was elected has been accused to be stolen. There are accusations that he has stole the election. So in the midst of all this, I would say that his political future is very much in doubt, frankly.
Right, and also if you could give us an insight into the past dynamics between United States and the Latin American countries over the issue of drug trafficking, because it's not just Venezuela. I was just coming to how the Colombian leader, President Trump, says is next.
So there has been a problem of drug trafficking from these countries to the US, and it is not as if the US has not tried to stop it. I think there has been an enormous cooperation between United States, Mexico, for example, United States, other countries of Latin America, to really fix the problem from a supply side. And that has largely failed, frankly. As long as there is demand in the United States and in other countries, the drugs seem to find a way to come to the US, because the stakes are so high in terms of the money to be made on illegal sale of drugs, that the drug suppliers, obviously, which work in gangs, find ways in which to circumvent law, and they find their way to the US. So the US has been having this problem for a long time. Everything else has failed in terms of US police force and coast guards trying to cooperate with the Latin American countries' coast guard and police. Everything seems to have failed so far. So I would say that ever since the advent of the Trump presidency, President Trump has made it important, and he has said this is a priority for his administration, that he will fix this problem in the Western Hemisphere. And that is why, as I said, in the National Security Strategy document, the first region that is identified as a priority, in the past it used to be Indo-Pacific, it used to be other areas, but this time the first priority identified in the National Security Strategy of the United States is the Western Hemisphere. And the only reason, well, there are other reasons, I suppose, but the main reason is obviously drugs, illegal migrants, and narco-terrorism. So it is clear to me that this case relating to Maduro in Venezuela is being made a test case by President Trump, so that other countries will then be forced to cooperate with the United States.
Ambassador Kumar, finally, do you foresee direct military action by the United States against Venezuela a possibility, especially given a certain opposition and dissent from within the US Congress for President Trump?
I wouldn't rule it out, frankly. I wish I could tell you categorically that that can be ruled out. I'm aware that there are bipartisan concerns in the US, where Republicans have actually supported the Democrats' bills saying military action would not be a good idea. But as you know, President Trump takes decisions when it comes to national security, and he doesn't hesitate in taking decisions of this kind. So frankly, I would not rule out President Trump taking military action against Venezuela.
On that note, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, thank you for joining us on the News Hour, sharing your perspective.